Alright. I think I might have gone a little overboard here. Because I took, obviously, the main franchises. And then I wanted it to be a bigger list than that. And so I was looking up franchises to get all these major franchises in here, and all the minor ones too, because there's some of them in there that aren't the majorest franchises that I wanted to put in there. And I knew that there was other ones that are on the same popularity list that I should also put in there, you know? And when I came to the end of it, I found that I had 22 movies, appropriately being 2022. And I'm going to not spend too much time on each movie because there's so many of them, and I tend to talk a lot on each installment in other videos, and I don't want to make this video 4 hours long. Not every movie in this list is called the fifth movie, either because it's like a sequel to a remake, or there was another movie between the franchise that is not part of the franchise but came out, so I can do this. So yeah, don't come after me in the comments about some of these not being the same number, because I'll go into like why they are in the lists when I get to them if they don't say 5 after it and they say some other number. So yeah, my number 22 is Scary Movie 5. And I know I'm cheating here a little bit because it's kind of comedy, but it is also kind of horror because it's all based on horror movies and some other movies. But the first two are classics, of course, and then of course 3 and 4 they're like PG-13 in a R-rated horror franchise, or even a R-rated comedy franchise, is never the best idea. 3 handles it really well. 4, there's some really funny scenes and parts I just don't like. But with 5, it's just god awful. Like, it was even a step. It just got worse as it went. I mean, I think 2 is better than 1, but this isn't about the franchises. I'm not gonna talk about every movie and every franchise I cover here, but like this fifth scary movie is just not great. There's some funny laughs, like when he's getting dragged and keeps hitting his balls, but then you realize that it's a really cheap joke, and everything else is not that funny. It's the only franchise that I think is mainly comedy that's on here. So number 21 is Predators from 2010, and yeah, it's just kind of derivative and not that great. So I know this is technically the third, but it's also the AVPs make it the fifth. This is my point there. And this movie is just meh. And being just meh is not a good look for your movie. With every other movie on this list, excluding the one below it, I can find things in it that are like, okay, this is good. Even if I can find things in it that are like, this is trash. With this movie, it's like just fucking meh. Number 20 is the first one that says a different number on it, and even the number it says, I'll just say it, The Hills Have Eyes 2 from 2007, 2008, 2007, 2009. One of those years, you can definitely tell. Yeah, God, it's just there's so much not good, but then again, there's like some really funny moments and like some kills are decent. But yeah, most movies that are fifth in a horror franchise are pretty bad, which is what I found when I decided to make this list. But yeah, this is if you're a fan of The Hills Have Eyes, but you don't know about Mind Ripper, you would say this is the fourth. Or if you're just diehard and you think the remakes don't matter, you would say this is nothing. I say it's the fifth, given that like you get the first, you got the second, and then Mind Ripper, and then the remake, which is great as well, and this movie, which I think is the first one that's like bad, because not only is it just overly gratuitous with its non-death violence, we'll say, it's also just I don't know, like shouldn't the army be more trained than that? Oh, God. All right, I'm gonna move on. Number 19. Again, this is another one where it's like, well, should this be on the list? Because it's Return to Sleepaway Camp. Now, I know that there's the first three, and then this, and then the fourth one, But the fourth one, most of it was filmed in the 90s, and it was just completed after this movie. So really, it was a toss up to me which of these to put. But since most of the fourth one, which I've seen a version of, which is not the real version, but most of the fourth one is filmed before this. So I'm gonna say Return to Sleepaway Camp is the fifth movie. Now, I have a weird relationship with this franchise. I really love two, and one I'm mixed on. Three is decent. Like I said, I haven't really seen four. I just saw like a different version of it. It's not the real version. But with this movie, I'm just like the main character that we follow is just so obnoxiously annoying, and every other character is pretty shit too. Like they're all just terrible to each other, to like a pretty far extent. And the kills are good. Some of them, and some of them are like they're all like conceptually good, and some of them are actually like good as far as like well done. When you don't have a lot of likable characters, it drags your movie down quite a bit. And I like seeing all the original cast members back. I just think that everyone else was bad. All right, moving on. Number 18. Once you found out there was 22 franchises, you knew you'd see this little fucker, Leprechaun in the Hood. Now, Leprechaun in the Hood is my second least favorite Leprechaun movie. My least favorite being the newest one from 2018. But this movie is definitely where I start to say I have fun with it. Like, yes, Leprechaun movies are bad, but that's the thing. That's the joke. Like, they're supposed to be like sea level horror that's like goofy, funny, over the top, parody type shit. It's not really parody, but it's just horror comedy, and it is. This movie is really funny, but it is not very. It's not as compelling. I mean, the lead three characters are great, and Leprechaun is of course great, but as far as like everything else, I do love the people that are in the church scene, but like, yeah, it's just not the best. All right, up next we have a movie that I've seen like twice years ago that like I'm basing this off of memory, and that is Puppet Master 5. I knew when I started adding all these franchises to this list that Puppet Master 5 had to be on the list because there's just so fucking many of those, and they didn't really go off the rails yet. I mean, you could say they fucked the timeline up a lot by that point, but like Puppet Master 5, I believe it Master 4, and the main character of that movie fighting these weird creature things. And I just remember that I enjoyed it more than Leprechaun in the Hood, but I couldn't put it any higher on the list because every other movie on this list, I'm pretty sure I've either seen more or I've movie on this list I enjoy more than I remember enjoying that movie, but like if I resaw it, I don't know. But yeah, I love the Puppet Master movies. Like I grew up with the second one. I was always watching the second one on tape. And then later I got a box set that had like the first 8 of them, all the way up to the one that's just the fucking movies playing and like a recap. And I do remember enjoying this one quite a bit, but like I said, I didn't rewatch this one as much. All right, number 16 is Wrong Turn 5. You can see that the new Scream had a lot of tough competition, eh? I'm kidding, but like it did, but not they're not here yet. Wrong Turn 5 is God, it was a guilty pleasure for years because like I love the first two Wrong Turn movies to death. And while 5 is too mean and the production value is so low because you can tell like the third and fourth are made by the same guy and they're not they're not expensive movies. They have a budget. But you can tell in the fifth movie that getting Doug Bradley completely lessened their budget for this fucking movie. Like, you can tell everything's a set. The characters are, like, most of them are just kind of annoying. The acting's not that great. Like, I used to love this movie, and I love the franchise just because, like, I've had these movies in my life since I was 10, so my love for the first two will always make me think of the franchise as good, especially when 4 and 7 are so enjoyable. But yeah, the fifth one's grown away from me. Teen Alien versus Predator. This list, I thought this would be lower, to be honest, because, like, you take two major R-rated horror franchises and you mesh them together for their battle royale that you've been teasing since the 90s. Does this sound familiar? At least one franchise did it right. Why would you go PG-13 Alien vs. Predator? Why? What did we do to you? Fixing in there was fun. The whole concept is obviously great, and I think that it is well executed. But like I said, it's PG-13, and then you can tell like all the kills are toned down, and it's just not that enjoyable, to be honest. Like, the fight scenes are fine. Really, every movie in the Predator franchise that's not the first one and the second one aren't really my thing. And I can say the same thing for Aliens 3 and 5 onward. And this is the fifth Alien. Uh, 5 just is not that fun. Like, there's some fun moments that bump it above all these other movies. Like, I have some deep nostalgia for the movie that's below it, but I understand it's bad, so it's slow. But AVP is just decent when it could have been something so spectacular. Tremors 5. Now, I love that Jamie Kennedy's in this, but I don't like how they handle Bert, and they make him basically senile, and if you're going to pass the torch, you need to handle it better than making Bert senile. And also, I know Bert wasn't the main character in the first two, but he is from 3 onward. At least up until this. Well, he's the main character in 5 and 6, but you get the distinct vibe he's passing the torch to Jamie. And I love Jamie Kennedy, and I don't think he's the worst choice for this at all. I'm just saying that, like, I think Bert being handled the way he is in the fifth one makes it less respectable, just because he was always crazy, but he's like, it's completely different here. You know what I mean? And it's way more jokey with Bert's craziness. Like, I mean, obviously he was always a comedic character, but like, I don't think he was the butt of the joke. He was the force of the joke in the first 3. Australia has some pretty fucked up shit, but like, I don't think that the creatures. I just don't like that they jump out of the ground like that and come down on you like that. Like, everything else that's new about them, I like the grabby things, and like the Ass Blaster's new design's pretty sweet, and like the way they use the fire in this is pretty decent. Like, I don't really hate any of these movies from here on up. I like all these movies. There's just aspects about this movie that really bug me, and it's primarily the way they handle Bert, and just like none of the new characters except Jamie Kennedy really grab me that much. All right, number 13 is Saw 5. I think that of the first 5 Saws, Saw 5 is the weakest. And it is a stepping stone movie that is just there to... It does tell a decent story about, like, working together and not being so selfish. And I love the Saw movies because they always are trying to teach lessons by reminding you about, like, life and death. And it's just explaining, like, why Hoffman is Jigsaw as well. Because because the fourth one ends with like showing that he's the killer. The fifth one has to explain why he's the killer, and so half of it's half flat, and like Strom figuring it all out with us, and Hoffman like backstory is decent. Like Hoffman as Jigsaw really comes into his own around the sixth and seventh movie. That he's the other Jigsaw, which is a big thing. Because if I ever rank the Jigsaws, anyway, whole idea that the fifth one is going on like five people that are chained up and they're trying to escape and they're killing each other off one by one when they could all survive. That is pretty fucked up because usually, like in the first movie, Jigsaw's like, I never kill anyone. They can all live, except for if this little girl and her mom live, then Adam dies, which, you know, there's a clear choice there, but there's also a very clear, oh, well, someone had to die there, so you are a killer. Movie, it really is everyone can live. And it comes down to if they're going to work together or not. And I love that, like, most of these movies, like, if not all of them, have some message going through to the end other than just appreciate your life because you could lose it. And, like, you don't know what it's like to have, and I love the Saw movies, but yeah, that's where Saw 5 lands because it's not as fun to watch or as masterful as Saw 1, 2, and 3, or even 4. Really, every character from the first 3 movies dies in 4. Spoilers. But yeah, the Saw 5 completely uh, only has a character from the 4th movie, and then it kills him, so, like, all the characters are new, and they're not as well written or, like, fun as the characters in the first 4 movies. Probably the one that surprised me the most. Well, it's not the one that surprised me the most, but it is one of the ones that surprised me the most. And that's Hellraiser Inferno. Now, of the Hellraisers that completely miss the point and call Pinhead and the other Cenobites demons and make it religious when it never was, this might be my favorite of that type of Hellraiser movie. Because in Hellraiser, they're interdimensional beings that, like, demons. The reason he says demons to some, angels to others is because we don't have a comprehensive dialogue to fully grasp the concept of what the Cenobites are. And what they do for fun to us would seem very hellish. So that's the whole reason that it is like that. And the fifth Hellraiser movie does completely miss the point, and I'm pretty sure it's the first one that does. But it wasn't written as a Hellraiser movie. It was written as a detective movie with like a twist at the end that he was in hell. And I don't even know if that twist was at the end or not, but like as far as like enjoyability, it's well made and it's a fun detective story, I guess. I mean, I haven't really watched the Hellraisers in a long time, but it is. I remember it being distinctly better than it's definitely better than the 2 that came after it. I fucking hate those movies. To number 11, and this is a movie that I saw for the first time in December. Silent Night, Deadly Night 5. 5 is really weird, but honestly, if you're going to point out that a Silent Night, Deadly Night film is weird, you might, like, water is wet, fucking, the sky is up there, you know? I mean, obviously, every movie from 2 onward is fucking weird. The first movie's a masterpiece. But Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, I think, is the best Silent Night, Deadly Night movie since since the first one. Just the second one, it's a really weird story, and, like, it's creepy, but, like, it's very... Fourth Silent Night, Deadly Night, it reminds me of Halloween 3. What, like, with the toys attacking all the kids, and, like, I love the kid actor because he's, like, he sees the toy kill his dad, and he goes mute, and the mom puts the toy in his room, and he's just, like, scared to death of it, and I think he does a good job of that, which is weird, because kid actors aren't always the greatest at that. Some are great though. And like the guy that plays the robot, he did a fantastic job. And of course the guy that plays his father, he's great in everything I see him in, even though I don't really remember most of them. I remember he's great. I can't think of a time I didn't think that he nailed the performance. Probably wouldn't know if I should recommend this or not. Like it's not that good. I mean, I joked earlier, but like really fifths in horror franchises are distinctly never that great. Further evidence of that when we go into my 10 top 10 fifths in horror franchises. We finally hit two movies on the list, and the ninth movie is the first one you were like, this is a good movie. That's not a good look for fifths in horror franchises, and it shows that Scream only had 9 movies to compete with, really. Children of the Corn 5. Seen once. It's my memory's not great on it. I just know that I like it more than these other movies. Because I remember that. And I like the second Children of the Corn a lot. The first one I like a bit. And I like 3 and 5 and parts of 6. I don't remember 4 at all, so. And that's basically the ones I've seen besides The Runaway. And so the like of all of them, like I only really remember the first two the most, and like the newest one because it looked so different. I can remember all of them but 4, and but not very well. I know I enjoy this movie more than the other movies on this list because it goes with the whole like it's a lot like the first one in that these characters are just strolling into town and they're just too old, and its simplicity is admirable, and I like that Kane Hodder's in the movie, and I don't know the whole town just I have to rewatch this movie. I almost rewatched this and Puppet Master 5 because I just didn't remember so much about them. I didn't because I wanted to get this done, but also just because I don't know how much it would have really affected the ranking, but I know that I enjoyed this movie more than Silent Night, Deadly Night 5, which is the one below it. And then the one above it, number 9, I could probably pop in any of these movies and just have some fun. And I would say that the next two wouldn't be my go-tos for that at all, but I would still have fun. And number 9 is Final Destination 5. 5, like I love the Final Destination movies. I might just do a video on why they're so great. But uh the fifth one is just amazing. Like of course the premonition is like top tier. The fucking well maybe second tier, but like the kills are great. I just the characters aren't the best, but they're not bad. Like I love Cockner, guy with the Kyle Gass hair. He's great. Fucking I love the kills and the timing and just like the Final Destination movies are always so well thought out and tense, and like the whole idea of death being what's coming after you. It's very appropriate and symbolic. If you know how I feel about this franchise, you might be surprised that this movie's so high. But number 8 is Halloween 5. Don't like the Michael storyline where he's killing family members because I think that it is inherently flawed to give him an MO, and it the MO in and of itself is inherently pathetic because it ties into killing his whole family means that there's some self hatred or parental hatred that he needs to wipe out of the earth completely, and he won't rest until he does, and the whole idea of that to me is just pathetic. And it lessens the character. But as far as enjoyability, it does like the Halloween 2, 4, and 5 are still extremely enjoyable movies. They're just a few tiers lower than like Halloween 1 and 3. Yeah, I understand people don't like that, like the lead from the fourth one dies. But I don't think people. I think people bring too much of that annoyance into their look on Tina because I don't think Tina's that bad. She's just quirky. And of course, having Jamie Lloyd mute the whole movie wasn't the best move to go, but it was evocative of Joey in Nightmare on Elm Street 3, and I love that character, and I already like this character. And yes, I know it's a completely missed opportunity to not have the next movie be about Jamie going nuts. Idea for a movie I'm gonna write. Yeah, Jamie not going completely psycho and killing people in Halloween 5 is very much the same thing with Tommy Jarvis in Friday 5 and 6, where at the end they kind of hint that he'll go crazy, but he doesn't. But with Halloween 5, it seems more of a what the fuck moment when she doesn't, because she fucking stabbed someone. But again, at the end of Friday 5, he stabs someone, or he goes to, and in 6 he's fine. So, like, it's a very common trope to just not like the idea at the ending of the previous movie and not go with it. Did blame Halloween 6 on Halloween 5 because that ending could have gone better places. And it's really the sixth movie's fault on what they did with it. Like, imagine if it was like just the FBI wanted to study Michael Myers because he can't die or something. That would be better than fucking. Anyway, when I got all of the ones I hadn't seen and the ones I had seen but hadn't owned on a birthday once, I, of course, watched them all, and I realized that I put 5 in to rewatch more often. And I don't know, I think it's just fun. It has a lot of classic cool kills, like the fucking, the gardening claw and the fucking scythe and the pitchfork. Just overall, like, it's a fun 80s slasher that's like, you just pop it in and you fucking enjoy it. I have to watch them like that. Whereas with the first movie, it's truly an art film of like with a lot of cool things. It perfects a formula that because of the way they tell it reminds people that like if you fill that blank slate with a psychology, you can tell a million stories about like things that attack and kill you as you're turning into an adult and like the way society rips apart at you and you can get more specific or more vague with it. And I think that a lot of horror franchises utilize that super well with like with what they're telling the story with. I just think that Halloween 2 isn't one of them because they make Michael going after siblings and family members and it drags Halloween's 2 through 5 down a bit for me, whereas when I didn't think of that as an addition before I saw the 2018 one, the whole franchise was like a little bit higher than that, but still not great. And then when I realized how great the original was, it made me lower the family ones more than I already did, and it dragged them down, but not low enough for Halloween 5 to be out of my top 8, so that's good. Some fun slashers that you just pop in and have fun. Friday the 13th 5, you knew it was going to be on this list, and I don't know how mad you are going to be at how high it is because I don't know how much you love fucking Leprechaun 5 and shit, but Friday the 13th 5, yes, the story was over, and it was a beautiful story of the first 4 movies, and like I don't want to get into how like meaningful it is that like Mrs. Voorhees destroying Jason's purity with a bad example and how that makes him ravish all generations to come and just how that all ties into how amazing it is. And Halloween it understood the story was over. Jason baby boomer defeated by Tommy millennial, which, whether or not, I'm not qualified to say, but that's the story that the Friday the 13th are going with. And Friday the 13th 5, A New Beginning, is quite honestly a parody of the first four movies, and I think it's a very clever one because they mix Jason, like his whole MO and look, with Mrs. Voorhees' whole motive, and that's about it. And they play with the who done it more than the first one does, whereas in the first one there's a few people. Friday the 13th 5, yeah, it's I think it's underrated because Roy, he does bag the most kills in a singular movie up to the point of the movie. But also, and yes, I understand the MPAA, fuck the kills, but also just the amount of boobs in this movie is just mind-boggling. And yeah, it's just a really fun movie. And I love Tommy Jarvis in this movie because at the end of the fourth one, they imply that he's very disturbed. And in this movie, they do a good job of following that through perfectly and making him like a badass, but he's just like, because he's so fucked up and he's gone through a lot and he's just lashing that out. And when I first saw this as a teenager, I gotta admit, I loved that. And I still think it's badass. And I understand that when he's confronted with Roy for the first time, as opposed to all these douchebags, the PTSD would kick in. So that doesn't really bug me either. But, like, I guess the biggest part that bugs me is that we never see Roy have his scream moment where he's unmasked and says anything. He just dies when we find out who he is. And so, and his motives explained by a cop. That's not a good move. But yeah, this is where that movie lands. I could go on and on all day, but I'll move on to my number 6, which is another movie that I think I've only seen once, but it was recent, so I remember everything. Rising. Now, I have not seen Manhunter yet, but I'm counting that as the first movie in the Hannibal Lecter series, making this the 5th movie. Hannibal Rising is just so well made. Like, really, from here on, I have to pay mass respects for a new movie breaking the movies that are it's above after this. Like, Hannibal Rising is fantastic. It's a little weird, but like, honestly, this is the movie Hannibal Lecter is the least pretentious in, at least that I've seen. I don't know how pretentious he is in Manhunter, but, and that's a big aspect of his character. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, like, that does make him more enjoyable in this movie. And as far as like prequels go, I do love this movie because I think it's like fucking right in line, and it just makes so much sense, and it's really sad and dark, and it makes it to where all the people that he eats or kills are, it's like very deserved. And I just, again, I don't want to go on and on and on about all of these top 7 movies because these are the movies that I love. In a franchise where I've never seen the TV show or one of the movies. Psycho 4. List that's supposed to be all of the 5ths in horror franchises is a movie called Psycho 4 The Beginning. And it's because of the movie Bates Motel that came out after 3 and before 4, so don't attack me in the comments, okay? Please. And if you're going to bring up the Scream TV movie, it was technically, it's 2 episodes of a TV series that came out as a special back-to-back, so I can cheat there. I've seen the pilot of the show. It looks interesting. I heard how it ends, and it makes me think that it's not worth it because it doesn't make any sense. I won't spoil the show. I love anything Anthony Perkins is in. Like, the Psycho movies are just, you can't, like, the Psycho movies are classics. And I will admit, some of the movies that are, like, the top 4 being above this is nothing against, like, obviously it's not against the Psycho legacy. But the 4th one being the prequel, I love the way they do that. Like, the whole explaining Norman thing, like, if they were gonna do it, I think they did it perfectly well. And the whole other half of the movie where it's Norman Bates on the phone talking about this, where he gets into what he's doing or like what he's thinking about doing, I won't try to. No one knew going into this what franchises were gonna be on this list probably, so I'll just say it's fucking fantastic. So this movie is in one of my top one or two horror franchises of all time. Which you've already narrowed it down. You know it's Nightmare on Elm Street 5. Love this movie. Alice, top two final girls with Nancy. I fucking love the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. I grew up with four of them, and one of them was Dream Master, the fourth one. And the other three, to know which ones those are, you'd have to watch the video where I explain the whack order I watched the Freddy and Jason movies. They're together because of Freddy vs. Jason. Not the point. Nightmare on Elm Street 5. When I saw it, I had years with Alice. And to see, like, her next evolution of, like, graduating and then the motherhood and that making her even more of a badass. And just the way they bring Freddy back always makes sense to me. Like in part one, if part two points to his powers came with him, and that's what that ending means. So, explain it because at the end of part two, he's still out, and the idea that he's gained enough fear to go back to the dream world where he belongs and go back to tormenting the people he's trying to kill. And then, of course, with 4, him using that little bit of fear to gain enough fear to kill in just one scene masterfully by turning his protector against him. And then in this movie, going through the child, it just totally makes sense. Because Alice has basically captured and destroyed Freddy. But they're linked because of Alice shifting the power through them. And the idea that he's using Jacob's fear to gain the power to kill these people, and their fear comes into play too, but like, it's just the best way to do it. And it also, it further develops the story of like Freddy, he's going after you throughout childhood of, well, not childhood, but like teenage, like, up fast enough. And Alice is the epitome of it because she's the one that makes it through everything. And in my mind, her and her son and dad and Yvonne, they all were out of there before part 6, where everyone in the town who had kids, they're all dead. But yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street 5 is just, it's such a fantastic movie. Like, I really love these top 4 movies. I know that one of the other ones in the top 3 gets a lot of shit. And you already know what it is because of, like, of course that franchise is here. But yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street 5 is just, I think it's underrated. I mean, I think that Freddy getting more goofier after he's killed everyone who was on his list in the first place, him going goofier after that, it doesn't really bother me that much. And plus, each movie being completely its own thing is part of why that franchise is so great, other than just Robert Englund and fucking, of course, Wes Craven, and like, just, like, that franchise is amazing. I could go on and on about just the franchise, but I'm going to try and stick to part 5. Yeah, like, I drawn out, and Dan's a character that, like, he's from the 4th movie, and yes, I watched it at, like, 3 or 4 or 2 or whenever the fuck I watched it, so that was big. I mean, I already kind of knew he died because of YouTube and shit, because I was just obsessed with the franchise, but still, like, that was ballsy. And then, like, the idea of, like, I like the character of Mark a lot, so when he died, that was cool. And he also got a really cool death. And the Greta, her death was cool. I think wish it was more extended so we got more of what was happening, because it's like the voodoo doll had a portal to her real intestines, and she was eating it, and at a certain point that he was really scooping it out of her guts. That was neat. And yeah, like, I did, and like, Alice, like I said, top 2 final girls. The idea that any of these 3 movies, well, one of them will make a lot of sense when I get to it, but like, the idea that the other 2 movies that are on this list are above this are just a testament to the movies, really. Elm Street 5 that I don't like is that the character that is made to be the most annoying because she just won't believe what's going on, and she's like angry at them for having the facts. Yvonne, she lives. Now, like I said, I like Mark a lot. Dan I like because he's in the fourth movie, and this one. Greta's fine, but Yvonne, I just didn't like her, and I don't get why she lived. I'm fine with her living, but like completely set on just stopping him. And one of these movies I knew for sure would be in the top two for sure. And one of these movies I also knew was going to be in the top four for sure. Everything else I kind of didn't know because I was like, all right, fifths and franchises, we'll see what happens. And so even I'm shocked that Seed of Chucky is number three. I think that every Chucky movie from the first five are just. I wouldn't change anything about them. When I was a very little kid, I saw two of them, and then. And I won't say which two because I might do a video on the whack order. I watched those because I don't remember the order. The original Child's Play a lot, and I love the sequels too. And like when you hit Seed of Chucky, Bride of Chucky makes it so horror comedy that like at this point they're shifting it more towards comedy, and I think every movie does it in like a little bit of a shift. And then I think that the third one, while being very serious, Chucky's one-liners are fantastically funny in it, and his lines are always funny. But like that was a good aspect of that. And then like by the fifth movie, it's straight up just comedy. But like entertainment value is a great thing in a movie, and it always works in that movie. I don't know if it always works, but it works at least 98%. I love the Stitch look of Chucky, and I think it looks better in this one than it does in that movie. Even though I like that movie more, but that's for other reasons. The idea of uh, going after having a bride to have a kid, like, and Glenn and Glenda, they're fantastic. Love them. I just like that whole dynamic of just the split personality first of all, but also the idea of like one of them really being completely uncomfortable with murder and this whole idea and having this whole like emotional dynamic with it, and the other half just fucking going haywire and nuts. I love it, and like I think this movie's underrated because it's so comedic, and just because like at this point the rules are out of the window, and I think that the rules get even worsely muddled later on in the franchise. But I love the whole franchise. I love what they're doing with the show. But yeah, God, camera meta aspect of it, like they're it's very Scream 3, but like I like this movie more than Scream 3. And but Seed of Chucky is just fucking great. Like God, like the fucking Jennifer Tilly, props for this. Like it, like in one hand it doesn't make that much sense, but on the other hand, it's so funny to have her playing Tiffany and Jennifer Tilly, and the whole swap at the end, and the whole like whoa, like now she's famous, and like that like leads that could lead anywhere. We obviously know where it leads, but like still, it's great, and it could still lead anywhere. God, too, but like I gotta give this like I think of them as separate, even though I don't like I never like completely disregard a movie in a franchise unless it's the newest Leatherface movie from 2017. But and even their top two horror franchises, it's yeah, I still say that with I just hate that movie, but that's not the point. Just, yeah, Seed of Chucky, underrated movie. I'm gonna move on to the top two now. More left. I've gone through 20 movies. Holy fuck. You should know what my top two are. Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003, because it is the fifth movie that came out in that franchise. I don't care that it's a remake. It's the fifth one in the fucking franchise. It's in the list. And those are the top two. And now, if you've seen my Texas Chainsaw Massacre whack order I watch those movies, and you'll know that that movie has a deep nostalgia for me. Now, this new Scream movie, I would say, is a fucking masterpiece. So the question is, which movie do I prefer? And I gave it a lot of thought, too. And I didn't think it would have to give it that much thought when I first walked into Scream 5. So, when I don't get offended. And hopefully if you're someone who was on Scream 5, you wouldn't get offended just because you blew 20 movies, some of which I have deep nostalgia for, out of the water, so until I decide if I even want to go into that topic, and if I decide, I'll let you know before I do, obviously. I love the way they, I think, get not enough screen time, but it also makes sense with the whole requel thing, which is why I think it works for the movie, which is not a complaint, but it's also kind of almost a complaint. It's a complaint with the idea of requels, really. But it's also just, I love this movie a lot. Obviously, I gushed about the last two movies on the list a lot, so the fact that this movie is this high is insane. And like I said, I didn't think it was going to be this high. Like, going into it, I thought, like, installment in the last two franchises, I saw new installments and blew me away, too, so. But yeah, Scream 5 is just fucking baller. Like, the gore is fantastic, and, like, I have, like, a few kills in each movie are primarily just knife and gun kills. And they stay in that parameter with, including the with an exception part. And they use it in a way that's just so fucking intensely graphic, realistic, and new. And it doesn't have to be explicit, not that gory, and I'm like, that's not the same thing, though, and I understand why the confusion is, and both sides. Kills are great, and I think that the smallest kills, the lower kills, are still fucking great. Like, but like on a different level, but like, god, this movie is fantastic, and I'm trying not to spoil it, but like the way they, and I'm not going to, but the way I talk about my number one for those of you who want to finish this list but haven't seen the movie, and for those of you who have seen the movie and want the spoiler talk, I'll do that. Then spoiler talk that I had left to say, and I gotta say, I love the new characters. They're really great, really entertaining. Randy's niece and nephew didn't disappoint. That was some big shoes to fill. They did great. Obviously, I love the two new main girls, and I love Richie. Uh, yeah, I love all these characters. Fucking Wes and Amber. Fucking, they're the characters in this movie are like some of the best characters we've had since Scream 2. Scream 2. 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I saw this when I was 3, and I've seen it enough times to have it memorized. So the idea that this is number one, other than the fact that it's just a masterpiece, with like the lighting and the tone and the way they maintain it, the way they work with the character, like just the whole fucking movie, it's great. And I don't want to talk forever for those of you that want to hear the spoilers for the new movie, but like, I got it's hard to understate. And the idea that the new Scream competed with this for a minute is just like again, amazing. but like I did ask my dad, and the first movie I saw was a horror movie I saw. I don't know what the first movie I saw was. I could never tell you that. But the first horror movie I saw was Blade 2. And then that was when I was 2. And by the time I was 3, I could work a VCR. And I had the tape of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. And I watched that shit on repeat. And even when I compare it to the whole franchise after seeing it, it's still. It's my second favorite of those movies, behind just the original. And as far as rewatch, make its own video, and I do go on and on and on about this movie in a video I've already posted, which is the whack order I watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies. So I guess to get more of my views on this movie, you should go there. Like it makes it feel real, like documentary, and they couldn't the original, the whole thing's shot very real, like it feels documentary anyway. But with the remake, they knew they couldn't accomplish that because the idea is that this is the updated, newest version of the movie. So they set that tone with having it filmed like a documentary at the beginning and having the crime scene footage look real, and then have the narration and shit, obviously movie, but as if we were just making a documentary on this event that happened. And it honestly tricked me for years, but I was a child. And but then immediately they get the hitchhiker, and just like in the original movie, when they get the hitchhiker, shit shifts. But well, I mean, they're not talking about creepy shit to begin with, but with the hitchhiker, they knew they couldn't one up his creepiness, so they did something that was arguably more unsettling, or equally unsettling, at least in a different way. Because the hitchhiker's funny to me, but he's creepy and funny. But there's nothing funny about this hitchhiker. And you're all gonna die. That is the creepiest shit. And then shooting herself, and the camera going through her fucking head out the fan, and that whole shot, that is one of the best shots in a fucking horror movie. That, the whole time. And yeah, some of them are using humor to maintain, but I understand that. And I love Leatherface in this movie. He's just so brutal, and this movie being the staple of my childhood might be, apart from just the original being so great that it surpasses it even after that, is why this is in my top few. And I say that because I don't even know which I like more, of Nightmare in Texas. And I don't want to really try to think that much harder into it, but those are the top two. And I think Friday the 13th would be number 3. But all that's beside the point. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is Sheriff Hoyt. I mean, one of the biggest shoes to fill was just having a new cast of the family members of Leatherface. And of course, Arlie Ermey had to be one of them. I mean, that is just perfection. And Old Monty's really fun. Luda May, it's unsettling in that you don't really think she's the killer, or one of the killers, and then at the end she's confirmed to be a part of this family. And I think it's weird that in this movie, Leatherface isn't as abused by his family at all in this movie. Whereas in the original, that was a huge staple of his characters, that he's a misunderstood person who's abused into this situation. And I think that is an interesting aspect, especially since this Leatherface is so much more brutal. But yeah, I love how it plays with the emotions of dread and death, and yeah, like I said, I'll save all the rest of my opinions on that for that video about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies. So we're gonna move on now to the spoilers section of the Scream part of the video, which is gonna be now. Okay, unless they just want spoilers, in which case, still, get the fuck out. Because I don't want to be the one to tell you about the big deaths. If you want to know who the killers are before you watch the movie, I'll start there. But after that, please leave because I don't want to be the one to tell you about who dies. Okay. So the killers revealed. Reveal one is Amber. Reveal two is Richie. I love the boyfriend twist because it's just like the boyfriend twist in the original where like, but it's just the reverse of it as well because like it's the character that you go the most back and forth with, and like with Richie, every almost just as like pretty much just as well as the original is because just like in that one, he's most as far as like going back and forth with it. Only in this one, he seems the most innocent out of all of the boyfriends in all the movies. Fucking, yeah, the most. I mean, after Sam and Tara, obviously, and the main trio of characters from the franchise. But I knew they weren't the killers. But of everyone else, he was the one when I didn't think they were the killer. I was the most sure they weren't the killer. But he's the one I pointed the finger at the most times. And with Amber, that was because she's the most protective of Tara. So like, I didn't really suspect her that much until like she's down in the basement with God, I love her character. What's her name? I've only seen this movie 3 times. Movie, and the same amount of people are in the ambulance at the end. Because in the end of the first one, you got Randy and Dewey are definitely in the ambulance. Oh, and Sydney. And at the end of this one, you have Tara, and then you have Chad and Mindy. And so that's fun. And of course, I'm not going to go into why there's the same amount of kills because that's a lot of people. But like, you gotta love that. And I love that Dewey gets such an honorable death. Like, stabbed in the stomach and the back, and then just having it ripped. And it's just so fucking gnarly. I mean, and my favorite part of that, like, other than the fact that, like, one of them needed to die because they haven't had a major death in the last 2 movies. But other than that, my favorite part of that was it's an honor. That was that cemented it as like, okay, this is a great movie. Not just killing Dewey, which I thought made it like, okay, this is a good movie, but the whole like it's an honor and having him have the most gruesome death so far, that made me think, okay, this is a great movie. And I was still in shock. Like I didn't like start crying or grieving or any of that until Gail was started freaking out, and I was like, "Oh shit!" Right. In this movie, they really make her better. Like I really like her in this movie, and when they killed her, I was like, "Oh fuck!" Because like when I found out she was in the movie, I wanted them to kill her, but like, damn, it's like that performance was amazing, amazing. I guess I really didn't only and Dewey, and I mean honestly, I don't really like the relationship that much either because it was founded on manipulation. But like, yeah, that was like really the only thing besides just being too creepy to not be the killer. But I understand the point of that scene being like everyone could be the killer, and it throws you off. It does. But I love the actress, and like I've always wanted to taste those lemon squares because like I love lemons, but isn't even a kill. It's still top 3 opening scenes at least. I'm not even trying to like say if it's the third or not, but like that was fucking brutal. And I love that like this time they're using stab movie trivia and like the whole Billy and Stu thing as opposed to the Mrs. Voorhees thing. Oh my god, that was the best. Like that was like there's nothing they could have done better. There was nothing they could have done better there. And like I don't think there's anything they could have done better in the whole movie. I mean, yeah, the killer's not killing Gale in the kitchen doesn't make sense, but them only killing one of the main trio makes way more sense than the character decision doesn't. So, I don't care. ranking. I think I should probably give some kind of a final thought on Texas, but yeah, no, I love that movie a lot. And like I said, if you want to know why I love that channel where I go into it like way too much, so I didn't want to go into it that much in this video. If there's any other things I should do, let me know. I don't know. If it sounds like something I should do, I will do it. If you're like, whack order, I watch Scream, I watched them in order, so can't do that. But uh I've watched them in order, I can't do them, so. Or if I like watched one out of order, then it wouldn't be that fun either, so. We'll see how that goes. I'm gonna hop off here. Like, subscribe, and all that bullshit.